supports that we've done, the first one that I see on the list here is Ahri, and we have covered Ahri Support before. I think Ahri is a pretty decent support just for the fact that she has so much mobility once you hit level 6. But before that, she's kind of hindered by the fact that her 1 CC ability, which is really what makes you pretty decent pre-6 and even later on in the game, doesn't go through minions. It's pretty slow, and unless you have flash up, you obviously can't buffer it and make it almost 100% of the time hit. So with that, I think we're going to start by placing Ahri as a support in the C tier. She has the ability to nuke people down, and again, she has that ability to stay really safe, but as a better pick than most, I don't think she is anywhere near close to A tier or S tier. We also have Anivia. We've covered Anivia Support, and unlike Ahri Support, she's a lot more immobile, but Anivia as support does have the ability to both, I mean, she's a control mage, right? So she can both kind of section off areas of battle, make sure people can't escape, blow flashes really easy. She has a lot of great ability to either slow or stun or apply CC to the enemy team. And with her egg, she ends up being just a big bait target with people wanting to focus you so much as support. If you have that up, you can really just turn the tides of a team fight pretty easily by trying to bust summoner spells or whatever it may be. With that in mind, she's not that crazy of a support still. She does have the ability to carry, I'd say more so than an Ahri Support does, and because of that, she's going to end up in the B tier. Next up on here, and in my older videos that I haven't, before I made the big change, because I used to actually make videos that were like 20 to 30 minutes of me just talking over brand support. And brand support, I mean, people view him as a normal support, not even an off meta, and he is just so much more lackluster than other damage supports at this moment. I'm thinking Xerath, I'm thinking Zyra, I'm thinking other things of that nature that really just offer more than brand. The thing that hinders him most, very similar to Ahri, is that his 1 CC ability can't go through minions. It's very telegraphed, it's somewhat slow, and he himself, unlike Ahri, has no movement capability at all. He's just as immobile as Anivia. Even knowing that brand is picked more as a support as opposed to both Ahri and Anivia, who we already have ranked. And I love Brand. Brand's one of my favorite characters. I was a Brand main. Unfortunately, going to have to go down to the D tier. He just doesn't offer enough in the way of damage without being super telegraphed. Fiddlesticks Support. Fiddlesticks is a surprisingly good support in the fact that he offers your team a lot of control of the map with his effigies, and he also has 2 forms of basically slowing individuals down from getting to your carry or diving on them with a fear, and also with that silence, excuse me. He also has the potential of completely, even as a support, winning a team fight if he's able to get like a 5-man fear off over a wall, etc. And for a while, I don't know, I think people have been moving away from him, but for a while people were even asking for nerfs of Fiddlesticks in the jungle role. Not that that gives him any legs in support, but just as an aside. Overall, Fiddlesticks is still without ultimate, pretty low damage as a support, and with you maxing Q and that being on a single target, he still has some struggles for sure. And with all of that in mind, Fiddlesticks, in my mind, is going to end up in the C tier. Jarvan Support is also one of note as well. Jarvan, he is someone who is great at lockdown, has a great single target, kind of a nuke, I guess you can call it, that's on a slow cooldown in his passive. And then also he has that great ability to knock up and lock up somebody for up to about 3.5 seconds, depending on if they flash out or get out of his ultimate. But with that, Jarvan is very reliant on his ultimate and also on enemies making mistakes. It's really about you and your ability to condition them with your flag, and saying that, and just poking them with your flag as you max it, offering that utility with the attack speed it gets you, and then eventually kind of playing that mind game and going in on people. Without his flag and drag to go in, then he's pretty much useless at that point, besides sticking next to one of his teammates and trying to just offer some sort of auto attack target for the other team or spell target. And because of that as well, and all of those in mind, he's going to have to end up in the C tier as well. And as we're going through here, I just want to point out as well, this doesn't mean these are bad. These are just in my mind, right, where these people landed. I want to also make a side note that all of these champions, if played correctly and well, can more than likely be A or S tier champions. This one's going to be surprising. So, Kayle Support. So when I put out the Kayle Support video, I think that's the one that has gotten the most comments of people questioning if it's capable or if it's possible, because previously, for a short period of time, she was a support, even in pro play, and then Riot kind of nerfed her down to not to be one at this point. And then also, you have to also think, right, that her heal, honestly, even though it sounds good in the way I described it in the video, is pretty lackluster overall. It's on a pretty long cooldown, it's pretty mana intensive. She has her issues there. But overall, Kayle does have this weird capability, after playing her myself, of people just not believing that you're not trolling. And in my opinion, she still gets more done than brand support on average. Is she as good as Anivia Support? Probably not. I think Kayle is pretty niche in the fact that if you have a champion that can go all in on the enemy team, or if you're against an AD carry on the enemy team that can go all in, then she is a very strong pick. And for that reason, as many others have made it to, we're going to push her into the C tier. Leblanc Support. Leblanc is pretty akin to basically brand in the way of your main objective is to nuke people and ruin them. She has a lot better capability of roaming and a lot better capability even than Ahri of nuking people down if you're ahead and just kind of chilling in a jungle bush. Right, I do believe that in the eyes of her safety, right, just like Ahri, where she can W in, W out, use her R for her W, and then get away as well. She fills that niche that you want to have when you're bursting support, where you don't want to have abilities to get away, basically, and kite the enemy team, and Leblanc is the queen at doing that. Also, in that regard, if you're able to use your ultimate or her mimic ability on your chains, you can lock somebody up for potentially just as long as a Jarvan ultimate if you hit both of your chains on somebody. And with that, I think Leblanc is a pretty underrated support in the fact that you can really do a surprising amount of damage, you offer utility to your team, and you're hard to kill. And because of all of those factors, I'm going to put Leblanc, believe it or not, into the B tier. So we're looking at Poppy Support now. Poppy Support is very interesting because similarly to Kayle, she is a support that you more than likely should not pick as a one-trick pony, but rather pick into certain matchups more than anything. Someone who has gap closes if you're against like a Yasuo or a Rakan in bot lane. Those are two individuals that just get completely murdered by Poppy Support. Anybody who has a dash, really. I mean, she's a little bit more passive early game, so you don't really have much lane control unless your enemy missteps. And unless you have flash up similar to Ahri as well, you're not going to be able to have much playmaking potential except for peeling. So as a peel support, she's pretty strong. As somebody who is actually going to be able to go in and make a difference and start a team fight, she has a little bit less clout than most of our characters that we've already gone for. And because of her being so niche, I'd say, and when you're supposed to pick Poppy Support, I'm going to end up putting Poppy into, with many of our others, into the C2. Next on the list is Nidalee Support, and Nidalee is similar to Anivia as well as Leblanc, and again, your main objective is to more than likely burst people down or at least poke them down, kind of akin to a Xerath as well. The problem with Nidalee Support is you're so fragile, and again, like most of these champions, unless you have extreme mastery of her, you're going to have a tough time being effective in any way. Just like our Kayle, right, support, you're going to have a really bad time healing people. Your heal's super lackluster, and the fact that when we reviewed the individual who played Nidalee Support up to master, they don't even max their heal first, they're maxing their javelin first. With all of that in mind, she has really no ability to CC anybody, obviously, until you build potentially an Everfrost, which was in the build as well for Nidalee Support. And she does have some slight capability of map control with getting her traps down on the map. But again, with you maxing that last, you're only able to have, I believe, 4 it is up on the map at a time. And even with that, it's pretty situational for you to even get any sight on anybody unless you're placing it around buffs, etc. Nidalee Support is going to have to end up down there with Brand in the D tier. Next is going to be Tahm Kench Support, and just like Zyra, who we've also done a video on as well, and Brand, Tahm Kench is, at least originally was, meant to be a support. With his recent changes, I guess rework as many people call it, people are viewing him as more of a top lane, and even some other individuals seeing him as potential jungle at some point. Honestly, I think people have overlooked the power of Tahm Kench in support as of now, because he still feels very powerful, even with his Devour being on his ultimate as instead of his W. But you have to see Tahm Kench as no longer like a big peel support until around level 6. He instead turns into basically a tankier Rakan who can't get out. I really think that he's being overlooked at this moment. Once he does get that ultimate, you really have a lot of usability to either decide to burst down an enemy on the enemy team, or obviously save one of your teammates and blow a lot of summoner spells or potentially ultimates as well. And honestly, he is just a force to be reckoned with from what I've seen in some of the games I've already played as him. I'm like honestly bouncing around in my head to put him in S or A tier. And I think for now, he's going to be our first to be placed in the S tier. I really do think that people should start giving him more of a chance. Unbench the Kench. That is absolutely accurate. Okay, Trundle Support. Obviously looked at as a troll support. Trundle Support is a champion that feels really bad for your AD carry to play with. And I think that's because people aren't realizing how much CC and ability your pillar has to both kind of negate enemy champions and push them back towards you and really act as a big form of engage. Clearly pairs well with other individuals who have CC also. You can do some nasty stuff with him in Vayne in lane. And beyond that, with him being a support and not getting a lot of money in the lane, the benefit to that is he gets a lot of stats just from his abilities. His Chomp ability gives him bonus AD throughout the game and also hinders the enemy AD carry if that's who you're focusing on the enemy team. And also his ultimate steals a bunch of resistances from potentially other tank laners that are so prevalent in Season 11. He really does fit a pretty good role for a counter meta at this point, and I do believe people are underestimating him as well. I'm going to end up putting him probably in the B tier. Yeah, definitely in the B tier. I think he's heavily overlooked, and I think if you are able to just practice it a few times and start to get your pillars on point and start to understand when and when you can't go in, Trundle Support ends up being very strong. Next up is Zyra. Zyra is another champion who is not really off meta. I mean, she was pretty low pick rate for a long time, but has recently seen a pretty big spike in her overall usability and a very high win rate overall as well. We were talking about Brand earlier and how him and Ahri both have that difficulty of going or using their CC ability because it has no ability to go through enemy minions or multiple enemy champions or really CC anything at all unless you're flashing into it, basically. And Zyra has somewhat of the same problem. Her 1 CC ability and her E is very slow. But it's so powerful, especially as you're maxing it, to get a 2-second snare off on multiple champions and to be able to do that through minions or additional enemies as well. Zyra has the same issue as Brand Support though, in the fact that she is very immobile, and so positioning is super important as her, but she does have multiple tools for her to get away as opposed to just using her E. She also has her ultimate, which again can be used as one of the best peels in the game, one of the best escape mechanisms in the game. Beyond that as well, if you get ahead on Zyra and you're able to get a quick mythic item on her, Leandri's Torment or Leandri's Anguish, whatever it's called now, you can really start to safely poke the enemy team and whittle them down before a team fight even starts, really giving you and letting you fit that niche of being a poke support. And because of all of that said, and because of her high win rate as well, and because I've seen some nasty things be done with her from our Japanese player that we analyzed previously, I'm going to put Zyra Support in the A tier. We have Zac Support. Zac Support was my first video in doing it in the new kind of format that we have now, but Zac Support is not bad in any regard. We talked about earlier how Anivia's passive gives her that ability as a support to really bait in enemy teams, and Zac's passive, of course, is very similar, if not potentially better as well, with the ability to teleport to one of his blobs if you're in danger from one of your teammates. Zac has a crazy amount of CC on the team. Obviously, his Q can lock up 2 enemies. His E also can lock up multiple enemies as well, and his ultimate can also lock up multiple enemies. With that, the fact that you're still maxing E on Zac Support means that you can make some crazy plays behind walls, even if you're just in lane, and also make some very decent roams to other lanes to where people will more than likely not be expecting you to hop all the way from River Brush on the other side of the map. Zac Support also is great great for the fact that you do not ever have any mana problems as him. If you're low health in lane, you can easily just W a quick minion line, do pretty minimal damage to them without even really pushing the lane, and start healing up very quickly as well. Honestly, I think Zac Support has, even though it was my first video, is one of the most impressive off-meta supports I've ever seen, and I'm super surprised we don't see more of him because he plays very well into some of these people who want to engage on your team since his Q can lock up multiple opponents. I'm thinking like Leona, like Thresh, things like that that you see very commonly in the meta at this moment. I love Zac Support, but while I would love to put him in S tier, I'm gonna put him in A tier. And now I'm actually going to change my mind. Fuck it, he's going in S tier. I really think people should give Zac Support more of a chance. He is just crazy and honestly a lot of fun to play. So that is all of the characters that we have currently done a video on at this moment for off-meta supports. I am going to update this every about 10 or so videos that I make. So keep an eye open for that video as we progress with them, and also go check out any of these old videos on the YouTube if you have not seen it yet. And I hope you guys enjoyed this quick tier list. Let me know in the comments below. Give me that sub. Do all those things everyone tells you to do, and have a great goddamn day. I love y'all. See you next time for an actual support video next Monday. Peace.